So thank you for everyone's patience.
Yes.
And all of the delays that we've had because...
Year of the Snake.
Year of the Snake, we're shedding stuff.
Yeah, great.
Eclipse is starting. We've also been really sick.
Yeah, that took us out for a bit.
That took us out.
Yeah.
And then we had trips and stuff planned, so that also caused some delays.
There's a lot going on.
I think we're back and we'll be a little bit more consistent, and we have a new setup.
Exactly.
And so... welcome to our new setup, guys.
It's cozy. It's really cozy. I love these chairs, the blankets. It's, it's fucking cold outside also while we're filming this. So.
We're also filming this in the middle of a polar vortex.
Indeed,
it's like minus 30. I also just came back from Tremblant, and it was like one day it was like minus 23 or 24.
That's cold going down.
No, that was at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Like you have to go 7 minutes up a gondola to the top.
So even colder.
Yeah, and then you're just getting like whiplashed by the cold. Yeah.
Good for you, man.
Thanks, man. How do we start this one? So we've been talking. So hold on. I've mentioned this concept to a few friends because you had told me months ago that you're reading this book, and I'd never heard of this because I've also never read the Bible, and I'm not really...
You mean as a Sikh you didn't read the Bible?
No, I also didn't. Actually, you know what? My cousin went to Catholic school, and she had to write an essay on why she should go to Catholic school.
Okay.
Because we're not Catholic.
Right.
But so I'm sure she's read it.
Right.
So somebody in this home has read
the Bible.
Yeah, but no, I've never read the Bible. But I was telling my friends that you're reading this book, and they're all aware of this concept. So this is definitely something that is out there and known. Yeah. I just don't think to what extent it's known is a different story. But I think it'll be a cool thing to talk about. But anyway, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about? We're going to talk about Jesus as a yogi today. And so while you've had some friends who are aware of this, I grew up in the Christian church, Lutheran church, which for those who are not Christian, Lutheranism was the first kind of Protestant denomination that removed itself from Catholicism. And the idea behind Lutheranism was to strip away, I'm going to say, all of the bells and whistles of Catholicism to bring people closer to God.
This is before Anglicanism?
Yes. It was like the OG Protestant
getting away from the Catholic Church. Pre-King Henry and his divorce. Okay.
Yes. So, yeah. And to my knowledge. Okay. I'm going to Google that. Yeah, it would have been, though. King Henry VIII was in the 1500s. King Henry VIII separated himself from the Catholic Church.
Right. Because he really needed to...
Because he needed to divorce.
Find his independence.
/ kill people, whatever his whole vibe was.
Behead his ex-wife.
Indeed.
And was he banging his wife's sister?
Yes, yeah. So that was Mary. So he was banging Mary Boleyn before he got with Anne. Yeah. Yeah, and then they had a kid, at least one kid together.
They had the one kid together.
Yeah, and then
that was like a bastard or something.
Yeah, and then she ended up marrying somebody and like lived in the countryside and whatever, had a pretty comfortable life all in all. Seems that
Mary?
Way. Mary.
Yeah, because Anne gets beheaded.
And dead. Yeah. Anyway. So, okay, I'm going to recap.
Lutheranism.
So I grew up in the Lutheran church. Lutheranism is the first Protestant denomination to remove itself from Catholicism. So basically the idea of Lutheranism is to get rid of, I'll say, the bells and whistles of Catholicism to bring people closer to God. So for example, the Catholic Church was preaching in Latin. The common person, the common little peasant was probably not speaking Latin. And by probably not, I mean absolutely not. So yeah, maybe you're going to church, but you're not actually really
understanding
anything. So the idea with Lutheranism is that it's in the people's tongue, so German, because
English came from German. Yeah,
indeed. So yeah, that's where I grew up. So bells and whistles kind of off. And I never in my life heard of Jesus being in India, Jesus having anything to do with India whatsoever.
It's a bit of a far walk.
A bit.
From Bethlehem.
Yeah, but I mean, like, back in the day, and we'll talk about this too, back in the day, people were walking quite a bit along trade routes and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like, that was shocking to me when I first learned about this. And the first time I learned about this was when I was in India doing my teacher training, because we were going to a cave. I think it's Vasista cave or something like that.
Okay.
Vashishta, thank you. And so our guru, as we're walking down to this cave, is like, oh, this is the cave where Jesus meditated in, and he spent time here and whatever. And I was like, what? Jesus was here? And like, who knows? Like, who, ultimately knows? But I'm just kind of like, wow, like these two worlds kind of colliding, right? And then we make our way, or as we're like walking to the cave, our guru's talking about like all of these things about how Jesus allegedly was like the whole, I don't know how familiar you are, but Jesus was resurrected and then ascended into heaven, and now he is seated at the right hand of the Father, who will come again to judge the living and the dead. So the Bible teaches that Jesus was like ascended.
And then came back.
Well, no, the ascended is part of after he came back and was resurrected. Okay. So resurrected, then ascended.
Okay.
Yeah. So died on the cross, buried, resurrected, and then went to all of his disciples. He's like, yep, I'm alive. And then was ascended into heaven.
Okay.
The guru was like, oh, Jesus was symbolically ascended into heaven, but after all of the resurrection stuff happened, he came to India afterwards. And I was like, what?
So hold on. Okay.
Yeah.
So he dies on the cross.
Yeah.
But I also apologize for my ignorance.
No, and that's part of why I think this is going to be an interesting conversation, because we grew up in two very different religious upbringings.
So he dies on the cross.
Yeah.
And then he's dead.
Yes.
And then he's resurrected.
Yes.
And then he ascends.
Yes.
Physically, he's still dead, or he comes back to life?
No,
and
he is like fully come back to life.
He's fully, like, wounds are healed.
No, so there was like marks on his hands and his feet. Yeah.
So he's come back to life.
Yeah.
And now he just walks over to India. And then this is after the age of like 33?
Yeah. So crucifixion happened 33.
Yeah.
Yeah. To my knowledge. And yeah, so like where he after he was resurrected, it was like, oh, look, he like goes to his disciples and they're like, oh my God, it's you. Like, because of like the marks on the...
I wonder if he pranayamed his way out.
Or like probably reached some sort of samadhi, something. But yeah, so like I had very much been taught like, it's not like Jesus has a grave on earth that people pilgrim to. Yeah, because he was resurrected. Yeah. But then my Guruji was like, oh, he actually came over to us. India. Yeah. Yeah. So I was just like...
Came to see Rishi Vashishth's cave.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is a nice cave. So then we all go up to this cave, and then we're like meditating, and then he's like, again, talking about like Jesus in the cave, and then he looks over at me and then this one other girl, and he's like, that's exactly where he sat when he meditated. So allegedly I meditated. I don't know, man. I don't know. So like you have to take things with a grain of salt, I think, in the sense that stories do get passed down through thousands of years, and I think there's a lot of truth to those things. But then at the same time, stories are being passed down through thousands of years, so it's like...
But we live in a time now where everything is, where is your source?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So it's like...
But, sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
But when you look at First Nations, and you look at a lot of Eastern cultures as well, history is oral. Stories are passed down orally. And...
You were saying... It's not an episode without righteous bouts of laughter.
also, as we discussed Jesus.
Yes.
But most stories, that's the tradition. And today you look at First Nations cultures and any of the tribes that you go through, there's a massive history where it's, all of their history is through story. And so how do you go up to a First Nations person and say, where's your source?
Yeah.
When you don't have a culture that wrote anything. So I definitely do think, yes, you take some things with a grain of salt, but at the same time, certain things you can't take, there's just a knowing.
Totally. And I think especially when it comes to like very important things that are passed down through history, like people are going to remember that. Like, but if a massive religious figure is in a certain area, like people are probably bound to remember that, at least to some degree.
Yeah, but what year are we going back to now?
Well, I guess that depends.
Because in India's history goes back thousands and thousands of years. You had Mahabharata, right? And that is basically the end of an era, but you have those properties still to this day, the land still to this day. Kurukshetra, like I've never been there, but the ground is still red because that's how much blood had spilled from this war, from which the Gita and like yoga, that conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, stems from that war, which lasted 18 days. There was so much bloodshed that the ground is still red to this day. So you're going to say that wasn't real? Like,
and that's the thing too. I think somebody who perhaps is not spiritual or did not grow up in a religious environment, like something like that would be really hard to accept, because people will always, I find nowadays too, question things and like come at things from a very scientific, like, okay, where's your source? And I think, yeah, there's obviously a place for that. I'm not saying that science isn't real. I do think science is real. But at the same time, like there's just things in this world we do not know.
And I don't think you can, like if somebody is hell-bent on not believing, unless it's been proven through source, you're never going to convince that person because
100%.
Because then you're going to start questioning the source.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that was really interesting to me was, so I grew up in the church. I will say as well, I never really fit in too much at church.
I wonder why.
That's true. I was never like, I don't know, like church girly enough.
What's church girly?
Exactly what you think.
I never fit in my temple either.
Yeah, and here we are. We found each other.
I used to do like kirtan competitions.
Okay, yes, you told me that.
Yeah, and I'd like bounce around from different cities, and I did like speech symposiums and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just, like my mom forced me into that to get me out of my shell because I was such a shy kid.
Yeah.
And I was scared to like speak in front of people, the irony of what we're doing right now.
Ironic.
And I would not speak. I was like super timid.
Yeah.
So her solution was like, well, now you're going to sing in front of everyone.
Great.
With a musical
that made you really happy.
Yeah, but I never fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Like, I remember, and it was always like that for me, no matter, we went to different churches, and it was always like that. I remember the last church we went to frequently, there was like a youth Bible study thing when I was a teenager. So I went early one day. I'm like, I know how I'm going to get people to talk to me. There was one big couch. Did I tell you this story? No, I told somebody this story recently. There was one big couch, and I'm like, I'm going to get there early. I'll get a spot on the couch, because that's where everybody would sit, right? And then somebody has to sit next to me and talk to me, because nobody was accepting of me when I was trying to talk to them in other circumstances. So anyways, I did that. And then as the other kids were coming in, everybody was sitting everywhere except on the couch. People were sitting on the ground. People were sitting in like this one beanbag chair. Like, it's actually like traumatizing to even think about this now, because I remember how...
Fuck those kids.
Yeah, how upsetting it was. Like, and eventually, like, all the kids are there. It's like a 3-4 person couch. It's massive. I'm sitting on one end. Nobody else is on that couch. All the kids all over the rest of the room. And then one of the youth leaders, like, obviously saw what was going on, because it's hard not to. And they're like, okay, can people come, like, sit on the couch? And it's so funny to me, because I was never the weird kid in school. It was just very much in the church environment that, like, I think I was either like, I was right down the middle. Like, I wasn't church girly enough to be like, oh, like, I don't know, I go to Bible study 5 times a week. I didn't do that. But I also wasn't like a bad kid. that was like, oh, I'm only here because my parents are here. Like I was kind of in the middle, and I've always been a deeply spiritual person. I actually found during Christmas time going through my dad's storage locker, this letter I had written to my like future self. And I was just like, oh my God, like I was really spiritual in a way that I had forgotten. It's funny to me now that like, as I've grown up and I've learned all of these different things, that they've added color to my persona and like version of spirituality and religion. So when we talk about Jesus and yoga in India, I'm like, whoa, this is so cool, because it gives me that extra kind of, I don't know, color, I guess, or lens. And even when I was in university, you know, fast forward from the being left on the couch, I had to take a class on the New Testament, which is Jesus. Like, I don't know if you're familiar. Old Testament, pre-Jesus, New Testament,
post-Jesus.
During Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is like all about Jesus's teachings. Like that is very much like
that's
talking about him as he's like preaching and like, and his like living, resurrection, death, everything. So the gospels are like the heavy hitters.
Is there any part in there about him in India?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I have never seen in the Bible. And who knows? Like I'm not somebody who has read every single word of the Bible. Right. I've spent a lot of time reading the Bible, but not. So I don't believe there's anything in there about Jesus being in India.
Okay.
And so when I was doing this course in university, what I loved about this prof, he didn't tell us whether or not he was religious. And he told, we were going through one of the gospels, I can't remember which one, but he was describing everything to us in the historical context of the time. And it created so much vibrancy of the words that were written down. I was like, oh my gosh, if people like knew kind of like why some of these decisions were being made or why some of these things were being said in the Bible for like historical reasons, it adds to the spirituality of it so much more.
Right.
So that was also really eye-opening too, because I'm like, oh, there's so much more here than just like, so I know some denominations will take the Bible for its exact words, but it's like you're missing
the point
sometimes, like the why. There's extra why in there. Are
you familiar with Novelle Goddard?
No, but I think you mentioned a little bit about Novelle.
So I recently started, I was gifted one of his books and I started reading it, and I need to go back to it because then I ended up getting 2 other books of his because I really liked the first book. Because I haven't read the other 2, I don't want to speak too much on it just yet, but he takes the Bible and he takes Jesus's teachings and basically goes into like mysticism with it. And it's
like Gnosticism?
He basically touches on how this concept of duality isn't what Jesus was talking about, that Christ consciousness is within you.
Yes.
And the light is within you, and following the path essentially is finding that light within you and how you too can attain that level of being.
Yeah.
And it's not him that you're praying to, and it's not an outside God that you're praying to. You're finding that light within you, and then how to use that power to navigate through your life. And basically, there's so much more to it. I'm giving you like a very, very condensed version from what I had read so far, but not taking how the Bible was taken out of context, because when people read it, they take it at face value.
Yeah.
And they don't go into the depth of what those words mean.
Yeah.
And how it's way deeper than what is on paper.
Totally. And a book that I wanted to talk about today is called The Yoga of Jesus by Yogananda, who, for those that don't know, is a very preeminent thinker and yogi, and he passed away in 1952. But his teachings are extremely valuable and insightful, and very similar to what you were saying, because in Christianity, we're all children of God. But I think in I guess, practicing the religion, there is the duality, right? The dualism. But a lot of what you're saying is exactly what Yogananda is saying, and he's arguing that Jesus is saying, hey, God is within us. We can strengthen that connection with God by going within ourselves. which is very different than what a lot of Christian churches teach. So I made some notes for today.
I find this fascinating because, like I said, I've never read the Bible.
Yeah.
I've never been one to sit and say, one religion is better than another. And that's even for my own.
Yeah.
I'm not one to sit here and say, Sikhism is the end all be all.
Yeah.
Because what works for me is not going to work for somebody
100%.
else. And I do think that most, not all, most religions are intertwined
Yes.
in some way, shape, or form.
I agree.
And the message at the end of the day is, how do you get through this life?
I find it so fascinating too. And to be honest, so The Yoga of Jesus, this is the book with all of my sticky notes. It was so, I was so engaged reading it, but I had to go back so often because my own version of what I've learned throughout my life.
Does it contradict?
Well, in some ways it does. And then in other ways, I feel like it adds that color and vibrancy that I was speaking about earlier, where, it just adds a little bit more to what I already knew and or what I think. So it's really interesting. I do think if you come from a very traditional church, you will find a lot of this blasphemous.
Will it trigger, will you find it triggering, or is it just something that you can't wrap your head around?
I personally did not find it triggering. I think it was just a lot to wrap my head around. So when I was making notes for what I wanted to talk about today, I took a lot of time doing it because I'm still, I feel like I could read this book 3 times and still not fully comprehend it.
Okay.
And it's a small book. It's including all of the indices and forward and whatever, it's 147 pages. So it's a small book, but it's a powerful book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's hear your notes.
Let's hear my notes. So I guess the first thing that was really interesting is Yogananda sees Jesus as an avatar.
Okay.
So for those who are not familiar, an avatar is like an avatar of God. So a messenger of God. Yep. Buddha's an avatar.
Yep. Vishnu.
Muhammad, Vishnu.
Yeah.
So Yogananda very clearly believes Jesus is an avatar of God. And I think that makes sense. And Jesus also, historians have shown that Jesus was a living historical being. Now with Jesus being an avatar of God, I think that could perhaps make some people uncomfortable if they think Jesus is in the same camp as Buddha or Muhammad as all being avatars of God.
But why can't you have more, and this might be even controversial to ask, right? Mm-hmm. Why can't you have more than one avatar? We call it avatar, but why can't you have more than one across the globe?
In Christianity, it's built on Jesus.
But why so you look at the globe, right? Today, through globalization, we're all so much closer than we ever have been. But you look at the globe and you look at that time in history. Mm-hmm. So you're in this, 50-kilometer radius in the middle of the Middle East.
Yeah.
And why can't there be another guy 2,000 years before you, 5,000 kilometers away in, the Himalayas?
Yeah.
Talking about the same thing that you've come across.
Yeah. And the way that Yogananda talks about it is that God sends avatars to the people for the time, and that avatar is needed in that area and to connect with the people. So, and I thought that was a really neat idea too, because it's nice that God is checking in on us.
So to me, that's not a foreign concept because in India, we have different yugs. Yeah. Right. So you've got Satyug, Kali Yuga. We're currently in Kali Yuga, and then you've got Dwapar and Treta, right? So each yug has its own avatar that sends the message of God, but the virtuous life that you're supposed to be living, that most of humanity has fallen off track of. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like this person comes in the form of a human, and whether it's Jesus or Buddha, whoever it is, Vishnu was Ram, Krishna, all these different people. And then Sikhism, we had our own gurus, but we don't really consider them avatars, they're gurus. But it's the message that's being delivered to the people to set you back on course.
Yeah. And Jesus would have known about Buddha. the timeline wise, he would have known about Buddha. So I think that's really interesting too. Like there's not like crossover of these avatars. It's like, that was the Buddha time. This is the Jesus time. And like, I don't know, all of these, like many of the major religions are born out of the Indus Valley. Like the Indus Valley in India, like is truly the birthplace of everything, right? All of the religions of today, which I think is really fascinating. And something as well that's interesting, actually, now that I'm thinking about the Indus Valley, is I read, and I honestly can't remember if it was in this book. I think it was. I was doing some other research on Jesus in India recently, but it is said that the 3 wise men who attended his birth, who were like following the star to Bethlehem, were from India, and they were wise men from India. And then in Jesus's lost years, from ages like 14 to 30, there's no record of Jesus.
So for like 14 years, he goes MIA.
Yes. So
he goes MIA.
Yeah.
And then he shows back up and he's around for 3 and then he gets crucified?
Yes. So it's said that he went to go learn from the wise men in India who attended his birth. Now, another really interesting thing that I had never heard about in my life was, so there's this Lord Issa, which there's record of him going to Tibet and going to a monastery and learning from monks there. And it's thought that Lord Issa is Jesus.
I've heard of this.
Okay. And that there's record of him being at this monastery in Tibet, and it was discovered by some Russian explorer or something, like I think it was 1800s. But the explorer is basically like, oh my God, there's record of Jesus being here. And they're like protected records or whatever. But it like, and it was
how do you you piece out of Russia, you go through Russia, through China, and you get to Tibet. I don't know, my geography.
Are you talking about the explorer now?
The Russian explorer.
Yeah.
And you speak a completely different language.
I don't know, man. The 1800s were a different time.
but you speak a completely different language,
yeah.
And you're from Russia, and then you wander your way down to Tibet, and you find a guy who shows you records of Jesus hanging out down there.
Allegedly.
Thousands of years prior to you showing up.
Allegedly.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And these records are basically saying that, I'm sure I can find it. The records are saying that basically he was like an enlightened being from God. I can't remember exactly what was said, and I'm not going to be able to find it. But yeah, it's just interesting to me. And at that time as well, it wasn't uncommon for people to travel. There was a major trade route.
Yep.
So people were traveling a lot. It's not like people were like, oh, I was born in Bethlehem, I'm going to stay here forevermore. So it, like, to me, it really does make sense that Jesus was traveling and learning, as the kind of person he was. Like, how could he not be? Even though he's come from, God the Father, he is still in a human form. What you were mentioning before, the context to a lot of teachings have been lost over the years. And Yogananda really drives that point home in the entire book. Because constantly in his book, he's talking about, he'll bring up the Vedas. He'll bring up just like how the way that Jesus said certain things, he's like, oh, this is very much so how other spiritual texts, were worded in the time, and like the way that Jesus, like even some of the language he was using was very similar to what other religious texts were writing, right? Something that I really liked what he said is that Jesus sometimes speaks in direct language and some things in parables pregnant with metaphysical meaning. So that also goes back to what you're saying about how, with Jesus, like basically encouraging you to look inwards to find God is not your typical like Bible. It's not, but it's just, I think like anything, it's going to depend on how you kind of experience religion or what your personal beliefs are. But I do like that Yogananda is talking about how there's different things to kind of read what Jesus's words are, aside from like the black and white ink that's in front of you.
What fascinates me about, all of this is when you look at and I'm going to take it as truth, because I do think that when you look at these major religions, you look at Jesus, you look at Buddha, look at Sikhism, you look at even, Judaism, you look at Moses. What's fascinating is all of these key figures in these religions, they all traveled. They're all known to travel. So there's something to be said about leaving your home space and wandering about to gain that wisdom and to gain that knowledge from other people, and then applying it to your life. Like every single one of them are known to disappear for years on end.
Yeah. And I do believe that they have like God-given abilities to already know a lot of these things, but I think it's really cool that they still go and they learn from other teachers, even though they still have some sort of inherent, like, I don't know, knowing, godliness, or whatever you want to call it, consciousness about them. I think it's really inspiring, to be honest.
But it goes to show how crucial travel is.
Yeah. You made this point to me the other day, and I thought it was so profound. Like, because even that's part of why I love traveling, is because when I go travel somewhere, and kind of like the more different the place that I travel to compared to like where I live, the more I find it exhilarating, because I find it puts my life in such a different kind of perspective.
Yeah. What I find cool is when you're drawn to certain places, like when you have this inner desire to go to a place, and I started to pick up on it when I went to Costa Rica. So I had this desire to go to Costa Rica like 3 years before I went to Costa Rica. And I didn't know why I was being called to, like, I did not know why I had to go there. And same thing with, I went to like 2-3 other places where it's like this just inner need to go to that place. And when you get there, there's like this sense of like profoundness that just washes over you. And you feel it in the essence of the air, the place, the environment. And it's like, there's some deep shit here. Like, I'm standing somewhere fucking insane right now. And I'm sure like with India too, you felt that, because India is just so full of, millennials of wisdom. You never know how that environment's going to impact the knowing that you already have.
Totally. To bring that kind of unification into conversation with Jesus. So something that Yogananda talks about basically for the entire book is the universality of Jesus. So I can tell you, based on reading the book, Yogananda is a fan of Jesus, for sure. Like, there's one chapter he talks about the Beatitudes, which are specific part of the Bible, and it's like he's basically just breaking it down, but like I can tell that he enjoys Christ so much because of the Christ consciousness that he describes, where it's like that bringing that, like, finding God within you. And
but maybe that is that not point?
But I think it is.
But how do you, so you have a list of virtues you're supposed to follow. Do you follow them because there's a fear that if you don't follow them, like, how there's this concept of heaven and hell, right? And I may be totally derailing off of what you're saying, and I apologize for that. But there's concept of heaven and hell and this list of virtues and these sins. And if you don't follow them, is hell a faraway place that you go to after you die? Or is hell what your life becomes because you're living in sin, or living, making the wrong decisions for your life and doing the things you're not supposed to be doing because they're not virtuous?
I would say traditionally it is a place.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right. Like in a sense that, if you're not living a virtuous life, you are making your life and other people's lives hell as well. Yogananda does not believe in hell, because Yogananda is saying, how can a God who, I guess, loves us, how can a God that loves us and that we are a part of
send us to a place
of suffering because we are of God? He's like, that doesn't make any sense. He's like, there's no way that we would go to hell, because God is going to send himself to hell through us?
Right.
So Yogananda makes a point that in all of these other religions, he's like, just because Sikhs don't believe in Jesus doesn't mean God's going to be like, well, fuck the Sikhs. you're done for it, because
that consciousness is the goal not to attain that level of consciousness?
I think it is. As per Yogananda, Jesus also thinks it is, which Yogananda basically argues that Jesus is a yogi. Jesus is like, not the OG yogi. Jesus is, according to Yogananda, and I think there's a lot of value to it, bringing everybody together through Christ consciousness. There's even a little bit in the book where there's like these little excerpts and stuff, and someone's like, oh, Yogananda, are you a Christian then, if you believe in Jesus? And he gives kind of like he walks around the answer, but he's basically saying like, well, I believe in Christ consciousness and that we are all one with God, and that through meditation we find God. We can connect with God through meditation.
Why do we need these labels?
I think humans just love to label things. I think it's an evolutionary thing.
Because I try not to read comments, but you sometimes it's just so hard not to because they're so entertaining. When I read comments about stuff, it's like, oh, you're like, this person's a Christian and this person's a this and this person's that. Why does it fucking matter what the label is?
I know.
If somebody resonates with a belief system, if somebody resonates with a way of life, why do we have to put a label on what they are versus what they're doing? Totally.
When I went to India, like I had no brush with Hinduism whatsoever before going to India. And then it was all around me for like 6 weeks the first time I went, and then the second time too. But I thought it was really interesting because in Christianity, it's like, you shall have no other gods before me.
Who said that?
God.
God said that?
Yeah, it's one of the 10 Commandments. If I'm remembering correctly. I need to double check. I have not read the Bible in a long time.
I could see why you didn't fit in.
No, but I used to. Okay. But I did not. Yeah, obviously I didn't memorize certain things.
Okay.
But they're basically, it's very anti-idolatry. And if one grows up in a Christian place or a Christian space, Hinduism would be seen as idolatry because there's so many different gods. Even like if you go to a Hindu temple, they're changing out Krishna's clothes multiple times a day. Like there's just so much to it. But I really thought when I was there, and I don't know if this is blasphemous to literally everybody, but I thought the different gods represent different things, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously. They represent different things, but I thought maybe those are all like faces of one God.
Yeah.
In certain ways. No, and I'm using that as a very broad, washed statement that would not apply in every circumstance, but it's just like kind of what was reflected back to me as I'm learning about all of these Hindu deities and these stories and everything. It's like, oh.
With all the gods and goddesses.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in a world where there is only one. It's just one.
Yeah.
So we don't have the thousands and hundreds of deities or gods. It's one light. And you connect to that one light that is within you, and it's within all of us. And the way I've somehow, like when I look at Hinduism and I see the different gods and goddesses that they have and what they all represent. I'll take Kali, for example. She symbolizes something very specific.
Yes.
And then you take Lakshmi, symbolizes something completely different than what Kali symbolizes. So I think in a way it's almost forms of energy. I could be completely off track, right? But when I look at it, I'm like, these are all different forms of energy that are needed that you can call in. I don't know too much about Hinduism in that aspect with all the gods and goddesses, but I think that at the end of the day, it's about that wisdom and that consciousness and leading that life of virtue.
I agree, because regardless of whether or not you're Hindu or Christian or Sikh or anything, like there's one God. I'm gonna rephrase that.
There's one.
There's one. The universe is one, and we are all connected to it, and that is true even in Hinduism. There's one.
There's one.
There's one. And I think in terms of Jesus, that Christ consciousness that's what Yogananda talks about throughout the entire book, is just Christ consciousness is that one. And Jesus shows how to get there. And that's why Yogananda is like, oh, Jesus is a yogi, because he achieved enlightenment, he was teaching others how to be enlightened. And meditation is not, to my knowledge, referenced in the Bible. But Yogananda's like, yeah, this is what it's all about. Like the Christ consciousness and connecting to yourself and by virtue God is how you are, like meditating is how you get there is what I'm trying to say.
And meditating is how you get there in all Eastern religions.
Yes.
Like every single one of them.
Yes.
Including like the Shaolin monks. It's all meditation.
Totally.
And that meditation is controlling your mind. Mm-hmm. You control your mind, you control your thoughts, you control your tongue, you control your breath.
Yeah.
And that's how you get there.
Yeah.
In this book, where, like, do they discuss where specifically he went, or his where his travels led him to?
Not
or it
in
was
this book.
If he was just there.
I have another book that I think will discuss that.
Okay.
Now when I get through, we'll talk about. This one was specifically Jesus and his thinking and
how his thinking resonates with someone who went to India.
yes.
Or would have been like the
Yes.
teachings the teachings in the Bible are pretty much what would have stemmed from the Indus Valley.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. So Yogananda starts off the book by basically saying like, this is where the thinking was coming from. Mm-hmm. And this was disseminated to his disciples.
And then you got Catholicism.
And then you got, and then things really changed.
And then King Henry beheaded his side piece.
Yep. No.
She was his wife.
She was his wife.
She was his wife.
Yes.
Initially, she was not.
Yes, correct. But he never slept with Anne Boleyn before they got married.
That's very nice of him.
Yes. And that was a whole thing because she didn't want to get married to him. Probably because he like had a track record at that point. It got worse, obviously, with her.
He had like he got married 6 times, right?
Yeah. There's actually a fantastic podcast. I'll share with you all about that.
Oh.
Something that you'll find very interesting is Yogananda connects chakras to Jesus in the Bible. There's a point where he would there's a let me read you the verse. It's actually from the Old Testament.
So Yogananda is saying that chakras are mentioned in the Bible, or he's
Referenced.
referenced.
So quotes the Bible saying, "And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have eternal life." So Yogananda goes on to talk about Kundalini energy and basically raising your Kundalini energy.
And your consciousness.
And your consciousness. I had never heard of chakras, obviously, mentioned in the Christian church.
In Alberta, Canada? No?
Definitely not. Definitely not. But I was like, whoa, wait a second. And there's also, in Revelations, there's like 7 seals that are mentioned. And Revelations is this whole other thing, and I'm not going to talk much about it because I just feel like I can't properly. But he also says that 7 seals are referring to the 7 chakras as well in yogic thought, which is really interesting to me.
The serpent is fascinating.
The serpent is fascinating. And his whole idea about the serpent is that when you're raising your Kundalini energy, you're raising yourself up towards God.
Yeah.
And which, like, as per yogic thought, when you're meditating and you're able to rise out of the lower chakras and you're lifting yourself up, I mean, you are being more connected to yourself and to the universe in that way.
That is the whole purpose of opening your third eye. And in yoga, you call it your third eye. Mm-hmm. In Sikhi, you call it your dasam dwar. It's your 10th door. Mm. And it's located in the same spot. And so you open that, like there's doors through your body, your physical body, and you have to work on each one. And the last one to open is the 10th door. And so in the yogic world, it's your third eye.
Yeah.
But that is basically how you would open whatever blocks you have in this area is what's preventing you from elevating your consciousness. Mm-hmm. And it's preventing you from connecting to the cosmos and, whatever it is that you're trying to attain.
Yeah.
And in Buddhism, they've got their own variation of opening that consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the goal is, through this human form, Like this is just a physical vessel. But the consciousness that is within you lays dormant at the bottom until you awaken it. And sometimes, I think like Eckhart Tolle was like sitting on a picnic bench or whatever he was doing, and he just came to him, right? But for other people, it's those rock bottom moments in life that bring you down to your knees, that make you like beg and plead and pray to God. And most people that find Jesus or find God or they go down this path, it's because you're finally so sick of your fucking shit that life has brought you down to your knees. And now you're finally able to work through this, but then you open up that consciousness by working through and getting that connection. So it's fascinating that he talks about the serpent in that context.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
I thought so too. Yeah, it was, and I mean, whatever. I'm sure some people will be like, oh, there's snakes everywhere, la la la. It has nothing to do with anything. But I think if you're taking the context of like when these scriptures were written, it's kind of interesting. It goes back to what I was saying about Yogananda being like, yeah, if you look at how parts of the Bible are written, or the Bible was written, of course it's going to be a product of where it was written. Of course
that's where it was written.
Yeah. So I just thought that was really fascinating. And I need to personally do more research on revelations and connections to the chakras.
Okay.
I thought that was neat.
Okay.
I'll read a quote from Yogananda that I feel like perhaps summarizes things a little bit better than I have. But God realization is attained by opening the 7 seals of these centers of spiritual perception to attain mastery over all astral powers of life and death, through which the soul ascends to liberation.
Is this book now basically Yogananda's summarization of the Bible, or is it rooted in fact from actual scripture? In like what? Sorry, let me play devil's advocate of like the comment that we might get. Where's your source?
Let me tell you my source. So something I didn't say at the beginning, which perhaps I should have, is the book that I read, a summarization basically of a 2-volume set of books that Yogananda wrote, where he is literally going through the Bible. And I can't remember if it must have been New Testament, but it's like over 1,000 pages between both of these books.
Got it.
So when you're looking through this book, parts of it are sectioned off and are taken from that 2-volume work. Yeah. I wanted to read this first because I wanted to get the overall idea, because I don't want to say it's easy, it's obviously not, but it's easy for somebody to be like, I'm going to write a 1,000-page tome on my personal views of everything I think. And I think it's easy to be kind of jaded about that, especially if the author is writing from a non-Christian perspective. Because I think it's easy to be critical of things that you don't understand or practice. Right. So I'm like, what's his deal? But reading this, I see that he actually really appreciates Jesus, because he just sees him, like I said, as another avatar. He's like, oh, he is Son of God. He is preaching how we should get closer to God. And it's like through love and like understanding yourself and, raising your Kundalini energy and all of these things, and the universality of God, I guess. That's what he's focused on. So now that I understand that, and it's not like, let's take down Christianity, right. And like, not that I...
Would it repel you from reading it if that's what it was?
I would say it would, because again, it's easy to like knock things that you don't understand or believe in.
Why would it repel you?
Because I want to read, like I'm not against reading something that I disagree with. I just want to understand your why. Like, why do you disagree with it? Are you disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing, or are you disagreeing because you don't understand? But like, I feel like Yogananda, even certain things that he says, like in Christianity, you believe in original sin. And original sin is like the idea that we are born imperfect as humans. We are human. We're automatically sinners because we are human. Yogananda disagrees with that, because he's like, we are of God. So how can we
be sinners?
Be sinners because we are of God. So that like directly contradicts.
Like, that's a pretty shitty video game.
100%. Yeah.
I'm born imperfect and now I got to spend the next 60 years trying to navigate through all these levels to attain perfection that I will never attain.
Yeah. So that's very different. Another thing that's very different as well that like I personally struggle with in general is reincarnation.
Okay.
So in Christianity, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, because you guys just go to hell.
Yeah. Or heaven if you're,
But you don't come back?
virtuous. No.
But Jesus came back.
But Jesus is Jesus. Jesus also was like still Jesus when he came back. You know what I mean?
Like,
Whereas,
like you would come back as a tree or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that doesn't exist. But Yogananda is saying, well, like if you through like years of practicing Kriya Yoga and years of meditating and like years of really dedicating yourself to God, not practicing religion and going to church on every Sunday and being like, oh, check, I've gone this week. Like,
And
but
now I fasted. We're good, clean slate.
But no, he like really talks about the fact that like you have to be an active participant in trying to get closer to God. Like you just showing up at church doesn't mean you're getting closer to God. You putting in the work and like spending time with God is what actually matters.
But also living your life in a certain, you have to live your life in service without the expectation of what you think you're going to get from living your life in service.
Agreed.
Because if you're living in life in service because you think that's the right thing to do and you're going to get something back for it, I think that's very selfish and it's actually very transactional and therefore not in service. I'm not trying to judge those that do that because they're not aware that they're doing it, but
they've been taught it. Like most circumstances, I would argue.
Yeah, but God knows, God and your consciousness, whether you want to call it, okay, let's take God out of the equation. Your higher version of you, your higher consciousness is very well aware of the intent that you're putting behind the shit that you do in your life. So people that lie, cheat, and steal. And, you might think that the person you're duping isn't aware that they're being duped. You know you're duping them, and you can deny it and justify why you're doing it, but there's a version of you that's fully watching and aware of why, like that's your consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's what's keeping score of your karma. So when we are living these lives and we're going to church or temples or mosques or whatever place of worship we're supposed to go to listen to the word of God, we never really apply that word of God.
Yeah.
And we're also, when I say we, I mean collectively as a species, we're full of hate, we're full of judgment, we're full of like these competitive energies, we're full of ego. And then we think that it means something because I fasted for 30 days or I fasted for a day or I, went and I did this retreat or I sat here and I meditated for 10 minutes. I'm still a piece of shit. So how do you can't connect with anything when that's the life you're living. And
Totally.
I think what Yogananda says, Jesus says, Buddha, whoever you want to pick your person, pick your avatar. It's how consciously are you living?
Yeah.
And to your point of reincarnation, it's a lot of my friends can't grasp their mind around reincarnation, but for those of us who have been raised in places where you're raised to think about karma. So the shittier your karma, the more likelihood that you're coming back because this is hell.
That's exactly what Yogananda says.
So the purpose of this life, when you're in this form, this is the only species that has the ability to think consciously. Everything else lives in survival. So this is really your only window to escape the cycle. And if you don't get it out, or if you don't get out, you're coming back as something else.
Totally. And Yogananda takes it a step further too, where he's like, listen, unless you're like super dedicated, you just keep coming back. And it's like, he also makes a point that it's hard to be so dedicated to God. And he talks about how like you might, these are my words, but like you might be judged for it basically. And like you might be, fear. And that, right? Say that louder.
It's fear.
It's fear, exactly. I want to make sure the mic picks that up.
People talk about the whole, how do you escape? Whether you call it the Matrix, whatever you want to call it, right? or the cycle of life and death involves denouncing and detaching from materialism. And materialism is deeply tied into the perception of other people. It's deeply tied into the judgments and the fears of others and society, because in order for, like, you don't need to go away into a cave like the rishis that you met in India to go be one with God. You can still do it while living your day-to-day life. But the challenge comes when you have people-pleasing tendencies. You have, egos getting in the way. You have the desires and attachments to certain perceptions of success that we have. And I don't think there's anything that says you shouldn't be a successful person. There's nothing saying that you can't be rich. There's nothing saying that, you can't have a nice car. It's why do you need it and want it?
It goes back to what you're saying about intention. Right? It's not inherently a bad thing, but it's like, what do you do with that? And like, where it's so distracting to be in our lives because there's always something fighting for our attention. So how do you make the time to connect with God? Well, is that you going to church and not really, or like you zoning out? Or is that you meditating for 10 minutes even?
I'll use the example of like wanting a big house. Right. And I'm going to go back to like my culture, like in Indian culture. You can say, hey, I bought a 2,500 square foot house. And someone is going to come along and say, well, I'm on a 2,800 square foot house. And you can have like, like we were talking about weddings one episode, I think. And you can have like whatever your bells and whistles are at your wedding. Someone else inherently wants something bigger and better than you just because it's bigger than better than you. Now, you can have a nice house. You can have a 3,000 square foot house. But do you want the 3,000 square foot house because, it's for you and your family and it serves a purpose for you? Or do you want a 3,000 square foot house because, your aunt and uncle on the other side of the globe lives in a 2,800 square foot house and yours has to be more than that? Like, is it to compete with people to show that you have X, Y, and Z? Or is it, what is the intent behind the shit you own? Yeah. And those are the things that get in the way of this relationship with God, because it's not about God or elevating consciousness anymore. It's about, again, going back to attaching to what other people think of you and how they think you're living your life. So
totally. So to take it back to Jesus as a yogi, Yogananda compares the Gospels of Luke and Mark with the 8 limbs, actually. So
explain to me how a gospel, so Luke and Mark are his boys?
It's a very valid question.
Who's Luke and Mark?
Disciples. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were 4 of Jesus's disciples. They spent time with Jesus, which is why their books are the Gospels and why they matter. There is actually, what some people don't realize, I think, is that humans put together the Bible. They chose the books that they wanted to include in the Bible. I have a book at home, actually, of books that were not chosen to be in the Bible.
Okay.
And it's really interesting.
Who gets to pick?
I don't know, man. I can't remember.
I want to know what's in the Vatican.
You and me both. Listen, I'm going to Rome in May. I'll just break in. Well, if you can break into the Louvre, maybe you can break into... No, I'm joking. Gospels of Luke and Mark.
Gospels of Luke and Mark.
You're basically... There's very similar verses where it's like loving God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. So Yogananda compares that to limbs of yoga. Or sorry, not just limbs of yoga. Yoga in general. So loving God with all your heart is like bhakti yoga.
Bhakti?
Bhakti. That was pretty good.
Bhakti.
Bhakti.
I'll take it.
Thank you. But bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion, where you are doing everything in service to God.
Yeah.
Loving God with all your mind, focus, concentration, dharana, right? Your soul, loving God with all your soul, Yogananda sees that as entering a state of superconscious ecstasy, so like samadhi. Yeah, which I thought was really neat. And then he goes on to talk about the 8 limbs of yoga as a tool to draw closer to God, and notes that Jesus taught the entire yoga system within his teachings as well as the union of God, which is then evidenced in Revelations with the chakras and everything. So,
Does he talk about asana?
Jesus,
Yeah.
not to my knowledge.
So he left out a limb.
Right. What does Yogananda have to say about that?
I was like, it's 8 limbs. I don't know.
You're absolutely right.
I don't know what part of the Bible is working out.
Let me see. What? It's not abundantly clear how Jesus is related to asana. But
Maybe he didn't include asana because he was resurrected and he couldn't do the asanas.
I knew you were going to make a resurrection joke, but I didn't know how it was going to turn out. You're awful.
Do I have to cut that out? Can I leave it?
You can leave it.
Okay.
You can leave it.
It's not super offensive. It's a valid question.
Quite offensive. Some people would find it very offensive.
I'm not trying to offend. I'm just trying to figure out why you would leave out a limb of yoga.
Okay, so the way Yogananda is talking about the limbs, not necessarily in relation to Jesus, but he does also say that Jesus said equivocally, the kingdom of God is within you, that is within the transcendent states of your soul perceptions. I actually don't know how he's connecting Jesus to us, but it's a great point because he definitely says that Jesus is teaching us how to practice yoga. Maybe if I read the 1,000-page volumes.
Aren't you reading another book by another guy?
About Jesus living in India?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a big book though, right? That's like a...
It's just dense. It's like...
Okay.
Small text though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that another yogi that wrote that book or...
I don't know. I think he's a scholar.
Okay.
I think he's more of like a religious
scholar. Gotcha. So the asanas are to aid you in meditation and aid you in concentration because you cannot sit down and meditate for minutes and minutes on end if your body cannot assume the correct posture to open your lungs and to sit and breathe the correct way.
I just remembered how Yogananda would likely connect that. He talks a lot about the importance of having a straight spine in meditation and does relate that to a verse in the Bible, and I can't remember which one, but he does talk about the importance of, it's not asana directly, but it's the importance of having a straight spine and like your drishti when your eyes are closed or to your third eye. And so there is talk of posture and positioning.
Just not like Trikonasana.
No, I don't think Jesus was doing a warrior 3.
Well, that was a...
Whew. You know what? Talking about religion is like really hard.
Why?
Because I fear judgment.
Why? You're not connected to God if you're fearing the judgment of mere mortals.
I think because religion is such a personal thing.
It is.
And I think people obviously take it to heart. And when somebody disagrees with them, it's very hard for them to...
But that's a they problem.
I agree. But then there's that projecting. I feel like a lot of religion, look at evangelical Christians who their whole thing is like, I must stand at Young and Dundas and scream at people.
And you can.
Accept God. Did I tell you? There was a guy who was...
Was it Jesus guy?
No, it wasn't. I haven't seen him in a long time.
I think he's dead.
I think he's dead, which is very sad. This guy was screaming. He's like, I'm in love with a man and I'm not gay. I love Jesus. And I'm like, yeah.
I see, I can understand why religion is a soft spot for a lot of people and it triggers a lot of emotional response because a lot of people's identities are formed around religion. And hey man, that's cool. Like if that's working for you, that's great. But does you getting triggered or you feeling a certain type of way or eliciting an emotional response to someone else's conversation or perception of religion, maybe look at where it's coming from. Is it because it's forcing you to now question your own beliefs? And why is that scary? Yeah. I've had to question my beliefs throughout my entire life. Like I mentioned several times, you grow up in a certain environment and you start to ask questions. The questions aren't getting answered. You start to look deeper or elsewhere. Yeah. And sometimes you're like, yo, fuck this shit. I don't even want to follow any of it. And then I went down a completely other, like I was an atheist for I don't know, like 12 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah, I would not like, unless it was for a wedding, I didn't step foot into a gurdwara. I would not go. And not because and it's interesting, like, I think this is the first time I've been acknowledging that, because it's not because I didn't believe that God existed. I think I was just so angry at the mishmash of the culture and the religion that it completely pushed me away.
I get that.
And what's fascinating now that I'm actually like acknowledging this openly is those 12 to 13 years where I was so closed off to all of this were the worst fucking years of my life, because I was intentionally making choices, making decisions, putting myself in situations that were so harmful to me. And I was almost doing it on purpose because, like, what else can I get away with?
That's fair.
You know, but I knew better.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people that get triggered by the conversations around religion, around spirituality, it's because, maybe it's forcing you to expand your mind or question something or look at another perspective that isn't in line with what you've been taught. That doesn't make it wrong.
Totally.
Because there's a lot of shit out there that people say, and I'm like, I've never really thought of it that way. And honestly, I don't even know if I agree with what you're saying. And I just move on. Because
I really think that having open conversations that are respectful, that, are not pushy from either side, are actually a fantastic way to deepen your own sense of spirituality and your sense of the world and the universe and God, because it's easy to stay inside your mind and be like, I'm right, and just continually validate yourself. But if you're having these discussions and like you're able to shape your worldview, I think there's so much more to that. And you're actually strengthening it.
I think there's a fear around curiosity, though.
Oh, for sure.
Like that whole curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you want to be curious? Why don't you want to learn more and have more in your toolbox? Why can't your toolbox have a multitude of different tools? Why do you have to get through life with like just one screwdriver and one hammer?
Totally. And I think a lot of people now are more drawn to spirituality because having one religion doesn't suit a lot of people anymore. And I think there's
we don't live in that world.
We don't live in that world anymore. And I think like for religion, like I lost a lot of my spirituality in my 20s. And it was a combination of various things, but I mean, obviously I didn't fit in a church. There's a certain point where I, like in university, I just wasn't going with my family, but I also struggled with a lot of messaging around the LGBTQ 2S plus. I'm not sure what the up-to-date acronym is, so I apologize, but I struggled with churches not being accepting of that, because my thing is Christianity is Jesus and Jesus is love. And if Jesus' one message is love, and you're a church that does not accept all people, like, what the fuck are you doing? So and I know not all churches are like that. I know that, and there's ones out there. I just to me, there's a lot of reasons why I just wasn't drawn to going to church, and then life is busy. I moved to Toronto. There was just many things, but I did miss it after a while, because I was like, I feel like I'm not connected to anything. And then it was really my mom who passed away that brought it all just rushing back. Yeah.
Wow. This is a pretty intense episode.
It is. It is.
We say that about all our episodes.
We do. I feel like this one too, it's so hard to talk about some of this stuff just because it's hard to wrap your head around many ideas. I would be
down to when you're done reading your other book, because it'd be interesting to see, this is a perspective from Yogananda who focuses on yoga and Indian teachings. It'd be fascinating to see what the scholar has to say about all of this, because that's a person who's detached from all of it. And I do think that I have to say there's definitely going to be bias in this, because he's trying to create, he has created a link between two completely different worlds that are really not that different. But it's going to come from a place of bias, because you're taking something that was in the Middle East and connecting it to your world in the Indus Valley. Granted, at that time, people did move around. But I would love to continue this conversation maybe when you're done that book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Bring more of the historical side to it.
Well, if you were triggered by this episode, if you want to trigger somebody else by this episode, or if you gain some wisdom and knowledge or insight, like I learned a lot. There's stuff we talked about that I didn't know.
I feel like I was learning as I was referring to my notes all over again. So.
Yeah. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.